What up, friends and peeps? Robin Black here. I am happy to be back. We are at Playdead Studios. These are my friends on Periscope. You can follow me on Periscope. Playdead is an art studio. On Instagram, I think it's Playdead Cult or Playdead_cult, something like that. Stu makes this art, and we come in and shoot art about the art of fighting. This is Water, episode 4. The open, Mojahed Fudailat. Yeah, artist, designer, cartoonist. Make sure you follow him. He did the open, and I love it. It's a little cartoon me swimming. Because this is our deep dive into martial arts. Studying martial arts as an ongoing thing, fighting in all its forms, mixed martial arts, the UFC, any kind of combat. We're on a lifelong study of it. And a lot of studying something is getting to a point and then trying to shatter what you believe. Because if you're so sure that something is true, when it's not true necessarily, you get forced down a particular line of knowledge. It's something we see everywhere we look. I don't want to get political, but it's why you see two people having an exact conversation and both thinks the other one's an idiot. You see it all the time. It's because they both believe something, and one or both of them is wrong. So we study martial arts in this way, and it is exciting and scary and hard, but it's very fulfilling. The first water that we did was after spending so much time looking into a number of fights on the deepest levels possible, examining, pulling things back, looking to find something deeper than the way that we normally look at it. And in doing so, we found limitations in our understanding, limitations in language, how the words that we use to describe things limit us from knowing anymore. But in doing so, we also discovered that we are in the golden age of martial arts. Literally the greatest time that has ever existed to be a martial artist, to have interest in the martial arts, to love fighting, to study combat, because there's so much of it happening. One of the great things that we see now, at least in mixed martial arts, is the decentralization of fighting. Okay? So everybody kind of studied the same things until they got to a point where everybody believed they knew how MMA worked, and then all of a sudden we're shattering our beliefs and sticking only with the principles. So this week I'm just exploring some thinking out loud, which it's a real gift to be able to do. To have your own podcast, have Mark work on it with me. He loves to pull these things together and figure out how to share them the best that you can. So I want to think out loud and explore something. That's what this, I'm sorry to my friends on Periscope, I'm adjusting this because it slipped. So let me tell you about where I've just been and how it's influenced me. So I'm a little tired today. If I'm a little scatterbrained or I go off on tangents even more than usual, I apologize. I hope you forgive me. But I just got back from Russia. Okay, so I was in Russia for 6 days and I was commentating the World Wushu Championships. Okay, so Kung Fu, right? Kung Fu. We'll call it that for a second. We'll come back to that. So let's just call it that for a second. Kung Fu, the World Kung Fu Championships. It's not actually what it is, but we'll get to that. But that's how people in the West think of it sometimes. You know, Kung Fu, Bruce Lee did Kung Fu. We know what we think Kung Fu is. Wushu is the literal meaning for martial arts in Chinese. So I was commentating the full contact combat version of the Chinese martial arts. It's called Sanda. Wushu is martial arts in Chinese. Kung Fu, which a lot of us call it in the West, doesn't mean martial arts at all. In fact, what Kung Fu means is hard work, or anything that requires hard work and determination and commitment. So a gardener can have very good Kung Fu. A dentist the way he does his practice can have very good Kung Fu. We believe we have good Kung Fu here. You know, we work hard and we try to learn and we're dedicated and we're determined to get better. That is our good Kung Fu. So we don't even know what it's called in the West. Why do we call Wushu Kung Fu? Somewhere along the lines, when we were watching literally translated Chinese movies, someone made an error in watching it, and we started in the West to call it Kung Fu. Kung Fu does not mean that. So I'm going to talk to you about the Chinese martial arts. That's what today a lot of is going to be about, and their application within MMA. We're going to talk a little bit, we're going to explore that a little bit. So let me start with a few thoughts. Kung Fu does not work in MMA. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu works, boxing works, kickboxing works. Karate, we didn't think it worked, but now it kind of works. Muay Thai works. Kung Fu does not work. We don't even have the right fucking name for it. We call it the wrong thing. Never mind our misunderstanding or lack of knowledge about the Chinese martial arts. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years of the study of an enormous, influential arm of the martial arts tree. And somehow, and not all of them, you talk to Matt Hume, you talk to, any of or many of the great martial artists and martial arts instructors who have champions and high-level fighters in the UFC. Many of them quietly, Greg Jackson, quietly study lots of wushu. But universally, the global we who know about UFC or MMA, we know Kung Fu doesn't work. We don't even fucking know the real name of it. And we've dismissed hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years of evolution of martial arts that we don't see, we don't understand. It hasn't reached the West properly and in any sort of meaningful way, because when Bruce Lee and others came over, all of a sudden karate, this was a martial arts instructor, karate became the word, Kung Fu became another word, hundreds of people started gyms in the 90s, there was the rise of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Just somewhere, the Chinese martial arts have not properly influenced and made their way into our North American understanding of martial arts, and yet we dismiss it. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine that? People who know a little bit about, just enough to make their thinking dangerous about martial arts, fully dismiss 600-700 years of martial arts innovation and evolution. Isn't that fucking insane? It's insane. That's fucking insane. And I started to realize that as we were seeing this decentralization where, people who have some amount of knowledge are like, this must be this way and it can never be that way. And how that right there is where the greats are forking off. Oh my God, these guys believe. When I started training jiu-jitsu in 2006, it was a fact. You cannot cross your feet when you do an armbar. Fact. Fucking people do it all the time. Don't do a can opener anymore because the guy will armbar you. There's thousands of these things that people think they believe, these ideas that people, if you heard a sound, it's just the door, no big. These ideas that people think they know, they become truths. Never cross your feet. You cannot cross your feet when you do an armbar. And then you see a guy do it, and you're like, well, why could he do it? And actually, rather than go, oh shit, we were wrong. You can cross your feet when you do an armbar. Many of us would try to explain it away. Well, that guy didn't defend it right. Fucking rights, you can cross your feet. Now people do it all the time. Cross, uncross, to get different reactions. Do it 6 or 8 times within the attempted armbar. Very normal. Front kicks do not work in MMA. You can't use the front kick. Oh shit. Lyoto, Anderson, front kick. Now everybody does front kick. So these are the truths. They're not truths, by the way, but these are the things that we shatter. And one of the biggest ones, so you're looking for a way to grow or improve. And one of the biggest ways is something that is you have very little knowledge of. If you can add, because when Carlos Condit actually talked to me a lot about this. If Carlos Condit is trying to improve his low kick after 25 years, he can put a lot of effort to get a tiny improvement because his low kick is so close to perfection. But if Carlos Condit does something entirely new that his body doesn't understand, he'll get a large payoff from the same amount of effort. So and when I said, Greg Jackson or Matt Hume or any of these guys go and have taken many lessons and are implementing many things from the Chinese martial arts. If, say, some of the other Western guys, say Duke or Dwayne, Ludwig, any of these guys, if they don't do that much, And I think they probably do, especially, I mean, they study everything. They've lifelong martial arts studiers on a long evolution. If it's not something that they do much of, then they will. As soon as you start, it becomes a thing that, oh shit, why haven't I done, or haven't done it for a while, they'll start looking at it. But I'm sure they both do. But the Chinese martial arts is a whole arm that a lot of your competitors, if you're a fighter, and a lot of your other teams, if you're a coach, they don't study it. Fuck, that's where the gold is. That's where the gold is. Something that is not a part of our global understanding. So let's quickly go back to how and why we may dismiss the Chinese martial arts. Again, Kung Fu doesn't work. It's not even the right name. It's not Kung Fu, it's Wushu. Kung Fu means hard work. Mark has good Kung Fu. Mark has good Kung Fu. We're taking that back. By the way, let's start using that. You know, if you got a good grind, if you got a good drive, if you work hard, you have good Kung Fu. Because that's what Kung Fu means. Hard work, dedication, good effort, dedicating yourself to something. We just made a mistake. And yet we still believe that's what it's called. That's one thing. That's just one word. Then what other misunderstandings or incorrect assumptions do we have about Wushu and Chinese martial arts? Fucking thousands of them. In fact, we don't know. Most of us, the consciousness of MMA, big, huge percentage of us just don't study it at all. Why would we say, oh, that doesn't work? Because for the same reasons we said the front kick doesn't work, or a spinning hook kick will not work, or don't cross your legs when you do an arm bar, or you have to keep your foot on the outside when you're fighting a southpaw fighter. Because we're just wrong. We're just wrong. We made an assumption. That assumption gets us into trouble because we believe something and we operate as if that's true. It's not true. So I was in Russia commentating Sanda. Sanda, amazingly, is not a martial art. It is a collection of rules and structures, and they're very clear about that, which immediately floored me because I've spent years trying to understand that to the truth that boxing is not an art form in and of itself. Boxing is a structure of rules, outlines, guidelines, glove size, ring size, round length. What is happening is a fist fight within those rules, and we learn to be a better fist fighter. Karate, and this is not a boxing or a kickboxing or a wushu thing. This is all martial arts. Brazilian jiu-jitsu is a structure. This is how you do it. But what you're doing is just grappling. All of them, you're just fighting. You're just fighting. Fighting is the expression of self. It's an expression of individuality, of physical artistic expression. It's the song of the body. That's what fighting is. It's the music of the body. So whether we call it boxing or we call it wushu or whatever, really it's just music. It's expression. It's martial artistry. So Sanda, much like boxing or kickboxing or Muay Thai, is just a structure of how you have to operate, what you can and can't do according to this full contact competition. It's fucking beautiful. It's an incredible full contact martial art. Punches to the head and body, kicks to the legs, body and head, and takedowns and throws and grappling. It's the perfect full contact competitive martial art. And when you see these guys fight, Sanda, using the expressions of wushu, what we call kung fu, to fight within this context, it has evolved separately. There was nobody there from the world of MMA. There's one or two high-level, Kung Lee, of course, the most famous, people who have competed in this arena and end up fighting at a high level in MMA. There's one or two big ones right now. We'll talk about them another day. But it is this incredible combat sport. And since separate from Faraz, Greg Jackson, the greats of our mixed martial arts world, the greats, the high-level explorers who are studying and exploring martial arts, these people have evolved a very similar full contact art form without being influenced very much from MMA. I talked to a lot of these athletes. I commentated 232 fights in 5 days. Deep dive. forced to have the deepest dive humanly possible into Chinese full contact fighting. And I learned a lot. And I saw when you leave, you take similar types of punches and kicks, similar types of throws and wrestling and takedowns, but you allow them to evolve separate from how MMA and the UFC has evolved. And all of a sudden, this Chinese art form that has existed for hundreds and hundreds of years becomes its own full contact fighting. And they fought quite differently. And there were many different things that they did and a lot of different understandings. So I'm just setting it up today in water number 4. This is so exciting for me to be able to sit and explore these ideas. I know they're not for everybody. I know full well they're not for everybody. But some of us want to dig down these rabbit holes. And this is an interesting one because there's a whole world over there. I may only be able to spend 5 or 10% of my mind share to the study of Chinese martial arts over the next couple of years, but I'm going to do it because it's rocks left unturned as it applies to MMA. I'm going to give you a few examples, a few concepts, a few ways and reasons why this is a hugely valuable, unmined field of knowledge. A few concrete ones, and then I think we'll leave it at that, and I'll circle back and refine some of the things that I learned for water number 5. Unless some other fascinating thing happens that drives me down a different road, and that could happen. These things are going to take a lifetime to learn. You know, I hope I live 20, 30, 40, 45 more years, and I get to study all of them. We can't learn it all at once. We still have to study, Tony Ferguson versus Kevin Lee, and we still have to study, Andrei Orlovsky, and we still have to study Demetrius Johnson. And this is what we do. But this is now, suddenly you're like, holy fuck. There's hundreds of years of martial arts development that has happened separately that we can now look at. So do some of the skills and the tools and the tactics work? Of course they do. But there's also principles and ideas, internal martial arts that have developed, understanding, connection, comprehension, all of these things. And if you're some kid who wrestled all your life and you have a wrestling mentality, you wrestle a particular way, some of these Chinese martial arts give you different perspectives of how to express fighting. But let's just look at something simple. Like, I think we have to start from a place that we all agree with the basics, that it is insane that we've dismissed hundreds of years of study. Now, when we look at the why we've dismissed it, not really that important if we all agree we're wrong, but it's worth examining still. Why? It's easier to just dismiss it and concentrate on the ones, and everybody kind of got blinders and started parroting each other that it was wrestling, boxing, Muay Thai, and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Nobody thinks that way, by the way, anymore. None of the top people. They do send their guy in to do jiu-jitsu sometimes. George still trains with the best jiu-jitsu guy and the best Muay Thai guy and the best karate guy. And so does a lot. But they're not thinking of the game in terms of these compartments anymore. They don't even think of it in terms of striking and wrestling anymore. Because when I'm standing with you, I'm wrestling, and on the ground, I'm wrestling. And when I strike you in the guard, I'm striking. They're not separated. We don't think in terms of wrestling offense and wrestling defense. That's not how they're doing it now. But anyways, that's a side thing. We talk about that enough. Which a lot of these things I talk about because I just keep drilling it home in hopes that eventually it'll become accepted. Because it's the truth. It's what we see. But so Chinese martial arts, yes, it's easy to just say, oh, that doesn't work. Then we can leave that because fuck, do we really have to go back and learn an entire new universe, how it works and why it works and where it came from and what's the meaning of every position? Yeah, we do. That's what it is to master martial arts. You don't have to master martial arts, by the way. If you just want to go and fight this sport and do your best and maybe win, you don't have to master martial arts. But the seeking mastery in martial arts enriches your life. I have a very happy life. And I owe a lot of it to studying martial arts. That's what I get to do all day, every day. So, yes, we've dismissed it. Also, sometimes we just say what we've heard. Kung Fu doesn't work. It's not even called Kung Fu, for fuck's sake. Like, can you believe that? Mark's got good Kung Fu. See this guy grind. Works his ass off. As a podcaster, he has good Kung Fu, great Kung Fu. There's a guy who fucking works at the Starbucks where I get my coffee. That motherfucker's got killer kung fu. That's how we're using it, because that's what it really is. You, my friend, if you work your ass off, you have great kung fu. It is a compliment. It is a way, an observation about your dedication and your work ethic and stuff. I believe I have good kung fu, and I want to have better kung fu as I go on. But kung fu is not the Chinese martial art. So since we don't even know what it's called, we cannot dismiss it. We're wrong about it. So let's look at some very basic, simple principles, some very small ones, because I'm going to keep doing this deep dive. I'll give you a quick story. Actually, I'll give you a few stories from Russia. So here's the first one. So I'm there to commentate the World Wushu Championships, the full contact art of Sanda. It's beautiful. I've changed for the better as a martial artist and a person for having done this. It's hard, dedicated work, but I'm honored to get to do it. And I'm around great people and being pushed. It's hard sometimes when you're in a different country. You don't understand the language. You don't know the food. I was working a 4 to 5 hour shift in the morning, then a break and have to nap because I didn't get a full night's sleep, and then another 4 to 5 hour shift at night, and then a 5 hour turnover day after day after day. 50 fucking fights a day. And I loved it. But so one day, food is an issue sometimes in these environments in different countries. So myself and some of the team from Switzerland, we go into the cafeteria at this stadium in Kazan, Russia. And we don't understand the language, and there's frozen vegetables that have been microwaved, and I asked for that. And then they give me buckwheat. Do you know buckwheat? It's like ricey kind of thing, but different. And then I said, I'll have that. And it was like a scoop of some kind of stew-looking thing. And so we eat it. I'm talking to a woman that we worked with, Sarah from Switzerland, super cool. The whole team, Paul and Sarah and Gavin and Guy. I love working with these people. I'm hoping to work with them again. I'll tell you about that in the coming months in China. More deep dive into the Chinese martial arts. So they give me a scoop of this stuff and we're eating it. And I turn to Paul and Sarah and I'm like, what do you think? They're like, I don't know, is it liver? Like it tasted kind of gritty. We didn't know what it was. So the next day I go back and it was okay. I mean, it was very inexpensive. We got to go. I got 27 more fights to call in like 40 minutes. So I have that again and I go to have it and she goes, no, wait, not beef. And I know they eat a lot of horse in Russia. So I'm like, oh, is it horse? She goes, pigeon. We fucking ate pigeon the day before. Like, pigeon. You know, like, look at those ugly fuckers. And then I started thinking about it. I'm like, did it taste like liver because it's like liver, your liver filters poisons and pigeons are basically just livers with wings? Like, I ate it. You know, and I ate a little more. I didn't eat as much now that I knew it was pigeon, but that's the kind of shit you're dealing with. Plus, you know, a 1 hour nap, then a 5 hour thing, and then 3 or 4 hour turnover where you sleep a little, and then another 4 hours, 50 more fights. It was a gift. Trust me, I am not complaining. But 230 odd fights later, that's the deepest dive. That's 25 UFC cards in 5 days of a different art form, contextualized differently, filtered through the knowledge of the martial arts over all these years, and highly modern, because they don't say Sanda is this art form and you must punch this way and you must kick this way and you must grapple this way. They say, here are the rules. Gladly bring your Muay Thai. Gladly bring your boxing or your kickboxing or whatever you call it, because in the end, it's just fighting. Those things are just doctrines. This guy, if he were still alive today, he would be like, are you guys still contextualizing and compartmentalizing martial arts? I told you there were no styles. He said that in the 70s, and we're still here discussing whether Muay Thai is better than boxing, whether boxing is a skill set and a rule set, or whether it's an art form. The art is fighting. The art is fighting. Sanda is a collection of rules and structures in which you must adhere to compete, as is boxing and kickboxing and Muay Thai. It's just free, it's fighting. And the UFC and MMA is the freest form of fighting that we have. Actually, once you go into Asia, one and other ones, they have kicks to the head of a downed opponent. There are other things that could happen to make them freer, but that's another story for another day. So this deep dive into the Chinese martial arts now, I'm back to my work. I'm back to exploring it the old way, but it'll influence just a little bit. And when I'm trying to understand what Demetrius Johnson is really doing and what Matt is really doing with him, the principles that you pull from a different perspective of hundreds of years of study and development give you a different way to view it. And that's how we learn. So I'm looking to go back, and they do call this collection of Western study the Kung Fu Championships. They just embrace the fact that, well, this is what they're calling it, so it's not right. And so I may go back to China for another 5 days of a different type of study of all of these individual timelines and stuff. And really, can you imagine if I've got 2 deep dives in a month, deepest dives possible into a whole world of other martial arts not explored and dismissed? It's just a gift. Hard work. Well, Kung Fu. It's fucking Kung Fu. It is hard fucking work. 2 days of travel to get there, to do long, long, long days, eating pigeon, literally, and stuff, but it's a gift. I get paid to deep dive into the study of a beautiful arm of the martial arts tree. So let's just give you one very simple example. There are thousands, and the more you study it and the more you examine it and the more you're immersed in it, you're like, oh my God, there's an entire world that much of our free fighters and our mixed martial artists over in this part of the world have completely ignored. Again, I say much because trust me, Matt Hume, trust me, Greg Jackson, trust me, many of these guys that are on lifelong journeys of martial arts mastery, they do not dismiss Wushu, right? Now Kung Fu, we use it as hard work, as a compliment. You've got good Kung Fu. That's how we use it now. It's not martial arts. It is a work ethic related, effort related thing, and we value that here. Right, Mark? We value hard work, right? So let's look at Wing Chun, which was where Neo knew Kung Fu, where Bruce Lee started. So Wing Chun was a form. Later, he realized, wait a second, styles, doctrines, these are limiting ideas. But everybody starts somewhere. So, simple principle of Wing Chun. Inside, faster. Outside, safer. So let's say these are somebody's 2 arms. Inside, I can block the one and strike here. Faster, straight line. Outside of both their arms, safer, because now his arms are there. That simple fucking principle, imagine now, and many of us have seen Wing Chun, striking and moving and manipulating the arms in tight from a strong position. Tony Ferguson studies it. Doesn't talk a lot about it. Might not even like me talking about it. Because some of these things, it's like they're a little secret shit. People don't think this is valuable, but I've mastered it. Not me, Tony. Or whatever level of mastery he's reached. So imagine now I'm in your guard. Again, I knocked over my Periscope friends here. Imagine now I'm in your guard. You have your legs wrapped around me, and I am controlling your arms. Inside bicep control or inside control. That's what we call it, because that's what it is. And I can slide them out to the outside and put both of your arms over here and strike you. Fucking fighting in someone's guard is Wing Chun. It is. In close fighting, manipulating the arms. So where were the flaws? Well, Tony has 2 doctorates in athletics. I did not know that. That's amazing. I'm going to have to look up Tony's background in athletics. It is incredible what he does. You should see that guy warm up. I don't know. When we're taping this, the open workouts have already come and passed, but I've watched him in person at open workouts. It's incredible. But you should travel to Big Bear. Yes, there's a lot of places I need to go. This is a lifelong quest to learn this knowledge, dismiss the things that I believe. Once you get to the point that you think you're very knowledgeable, you think you have the facts, that's when you're going to be wrong. That's what you are looking for. That's what every single coach is looking for. You know, whether somebody watches fighting and puts out into the global consciousness, oh, you can only fight this way, you know, whether that's somebody on television or somebody in these places, or younger coaches make these statements, or in commentary these things, these beliefs become known and accepted. And once what good fighters and coaches are looking for, what Demetrius Johnson is looking for, is what do you think is true that's not true? That's what they're all looking for. That's the decentralization of fighting. the truths that people believe. And I have to, and so does everybody else. As soon as you hear somebody telling you authoritatively about fighting, not curiosity driven, but authoritative. You must do this, always do this. This guy's good at this because of this. This guy's bad because of that. They stopped growing. We have to keep searching, and we have to keep, like science and many other things, we have to keep seeking to disprove what we believe. And that's of incredible value to life. Because if the people who are arguing about, if I can name anything, I don't even want to say anything because I've become so allergic to these political arguments, but take, God, I don't even want to say gun control or fucking, who knows? Take anything on which people are diametrically opposed. If either one of them would just pause and look at themselves and question their own beliefs, is it possible I'm wrong? Why do I believe what I believe? What amounts of information have caused me to believe this? What could I learn that would make me believe something different? But instead we go, I believe this, I'll build armor around it, I will protect it, and no matter what, there are still people who absolutely would think, and you'll hear it still. I think you're going to hear it less and less because and others will harp on these things for a long time until they leave the consciousness. But if you hear somebody talking about foot position at Southpaw versus Orthodox, for example, one of the big sort of not truths that there's hundreds of them, that we share in fighting, you will look and go, that guy actually believes that to be true. But sometimes they don't. Sometimes the nature of how we share things, especially television, how television came along and you have to pick one side and I'll pick the other. You hate Trump and I love Trump, or you love Trump and whatever it is. Again, it's easy. These are easy examples, but I do not want, I'm trying really hard to avoid news now. It's harmful. I see the harm. It's shaped us all to be closed in the way that we look at the world, and closed and unwilling to grow and change. Change is awesome. People, you see sometimes people like point at someone as a flip-flopper. See, they're a flip-flopper. They used to think this, but now they think that. That's good. That's good. It's also, somebody say, wow, so true. People always pick teams and it seems like growth stops. It's also why I'm resistant to predicting fights and who you got. I don't have anybody. I got the fight itself. I've got the movement and the flow between them. I've got what's happening when these two brilliant guys come together. Do I cheer for some fighters? Fuck yeah. I cheer for Cub Swanson. I cheer for fucking McGregor. You know? I don't know who I cheer for with Kevin and Tony. I like them both personally and as fighters. But fuck, I can't wait. And by the time you're watching this fight has maybe already happened. I hope it was beautiful. I hope it was wonderful. Do I cheer for John Jones? I don't know. I sure want to see him do his thing because he's magical. I don't want to know if I like him. He's kind of a jerk sometimes. Sort of rude to me. I don't know why. I'm nice. But it's not me. I watch. I don't want to pick on the guy. He's just on his journey, trying to find himself. It's not easy. It's not fucking easy. But studying the martial arts helps. Kevin has 22 minutes to weigh in. Oh, sources say time. So when you're watching this, it is Friday before that fight. If you're watching this and it's Tuesday, you have a different lens to look at this conversation through. You have new information. Anyway, so we looked at Wing Chun, inside fast, outside safe. Of course, if you can take my arms and put them over here, I have no weapons, you're here. Fucking Michael Bisping, outside safe. When he knocked out Luke. Luke's over here, Mike's over here. You know, Dominic Cruz, a big part of his fight was inside fast, outside safe. That principle evolved for hundreds of years. So, but you could dismiss Wing Chun. Well, they stand upright with their hands like this. You can't fight that way. Fuck, we'll change the stance then. It's not about the whole thing. Wing Chun doesn't work. It's through the study of Wing Chun and understanding direct lines and inside and outside and control of your body and the strength of structure and, you know, the right balance between hard and soft. Fuck, that'll make you a better martial artist. Fuck, it will. Undeniable. Undeniable. And just take bits of it now. We fight in all manner of ways. Take the bits of how we manipulate the arms in that way and apply it to what they used to call ground and pound. Striking on the ground against somebody where parts of your body are attached from the lower body. And there we're dealing with their hands. That is fucking Wing Chun to a degree, until he starts to look at it that way. And then we'll apply other ideas and concepts. New ones we've not even thought about. But we cannot dismiss the Chinese martial arts. It's insane to do so. And if we do, right there is where, I don't know if you're watching this on Tuesday, Wednesday, or in 2018. I don't know if Tony beat Kevin. It's fucking hard. They're different. They're very, very different. That's why it's so cool. I don't know if he did. I don't know. Maybe he didn't. Maybe Kevin fucking laid him out. I don't know. That's why we watch. But he has used some of these ideas. You see it in the way that he reaches through from a stance that somebody who knows only a little bit about fighting, but is insulated in their belief system, would say, you can't lean forward and overextend. Tony fucking did that all night long against RDA and many others. Stood in one spot at a range that others only kick from, and through taking his body and placing his body to a closer range that people punch from, feet are in the distance that you kick from, but his upper body, through reaching or leaning or overextending, is now in that new one, and so you'll see him strike like this. It's fucking brought from the Chinese martial arts, and it's working. You already cannot say Kung Fu doesn't work. Again, it's not even the right fucking name that we're using. If we don't know what it's called, we don't know anything about it. And I fucking had the best time of my life studying it over there and being forced, but I'm looking at it through the mind of somebody who's called 400 shows. So I've called 4,000 fights. Well, now I add another 250. So that is 250 or thereabouts of 100 is 25%. Of 400 is about 6%. So I added 6% more. And I probably there's 4 human beings who've commentated more fights than I have because of and not because I got access to the biggest fights, but because I had to call many hundreds of small fight cards when I used to work at Fight Network. Me and Ramdeen used to call that. So now 6% more after 10 years of doing it in only 5 days in an entirely new in an entirely new arena, an entirely new construct of rules and guidelines and scenarios and skills, but through the lens of somebody who mostly watches MMA. I grew. It was a gift. It was great. Now I may go back to China in about 30 days, do it again, slightly different. And while there, I'll tell you about the job. If it materializes, many things still have to be negotiated. It's a lot of time away. You know, it's costly. You get paid, but I still trade it. You can only in life be, if I'm here, where am I not? And what am I losing by not being there? So there's all kinds of things to be figured out yet, but it's being discussed. Another deep dive into Chinese martial arts, now looking at it historically, now looking at how and why it took these shapes, and looking at, if we can just see such obvious application just in Wing Chun inside somebody while grappling or striking them on the ground, and then we already see it working. The guy's fighting for the interim lightweight title and he's fucking beating everybody. He lost one time, I think, ever in the UFC, right? Tony? Yeah, he lost to, Mike Johnson. And he's been getting better and better. This man's using this. And yet, so it's not even a theory. He's right there doing it. Look at it's Tony. He's fucking doing Kung Fu. He's taking pieces of, it's actually called Wushu, or San Xiao is a part of the expression of the full contact style. He's using it. He's taking it and he's winning with it. So we know it's real. We know it's a missing piece, and we know that's where the gold is. So I am going to spend the next year, I am going to embed with coaches and fighters. We're going to study the way we study. We're going to do breakdowns and analysis. We're going to keep doing what we do, but I'm going to apply a little bit of my mind to studying that. Because if I just did nothing but study Wushu, the abilities and all of these other things and understanding of them all would change too dramatically. But if I can do these 5-day deep dives, 250 fights, commentating them, that deep focus, I can find some new stuff to share with you guys in the golden age of fighting. The golden age of martial arts. That's what we're in right now. We don't necessarily always see it. The last thing the fish discover is the water, but we are in it, my friends. And I'm fucking thrilled to be doing whatever tiny little role I can to go study as much as I can and bring some back to share with you. And I really do hope that we don't just figure out something neat about martial arts, but we see that through examining things these ways and changing the way that we look at things and the way we believe and the way that our beliefs limit us and the way we insulate ourselves against change and all those things, that'll give you some value in other things in life. It'll help you have good kung fu. We'll be back. This is a gift. I can't thank you enough for either watching this or listening to it on SoundCloud or iTunes or whatever. If you're listening to these podcasts, please reach out to me. I know we've got a lot of listeners now. Please reach out to me and let me know how they translate for audio only, because I am using my hands and trying to share ideas physically. So please let me know. Please follow me on Instagram, Robin Black MMA. At Robin Black MMA. If you're watching this on YouTube but you haven't subscribed, click that right now and click that bell so you get notifications. And please consider checking out our Patreon. Patreon, patreon.com/Robin Black is where people give us a little extra support, and we try to use it to go and gather more information and gather more time with people that you want us to spend time with and share it with you. Really, really appreciate you guys. I'm really thrilled to be back. But travel is wonderful. It forces you to grow and you learn a lot of stuff. And I will talk about it within the next 24 or 36 hours, if you're watching this when it first comes up. I'll have a new Fighting is About Fighting. I don't know if it's number 17 or 20 or what the fuck it is. I'm going to talk a little bit about what I've learned. And by next week, we're going to get back to analyzing fights, doing 1-minute analysis, 10-minute analysis. John Ramdeen, we'll try to get David Mullins in, and we'll get back down to picking and analyzing. Not picking. I don't pick. Sorry. We're going to look more as to why that is and why that's shaping our society, this choosing of sides and then defending it at all costs. It's affecting our society negatively. Maybe we can change that a little bit, our tiny little bit. But we'll get back to that stuff next week. But thank you so much. Your feedback is helpful, and I fucking love you guys. Black out.